Chad Brendel, BearcatJournal.com, here with Luke Fickell, head football coach at the University of Cincinnati. Coach, coming into year two, what did you learn from year one? What did you take away from that as you're looking to go into that second season and try to continue building the foundation and improve the program?
Well, I think it really kind of showed up in spring ball. We obviously noticed some things from the first year that we really had to kind of hone in on and focus on, and it didn't even have anything to do with a lot of stuff on the field. It was a lot of stuff just internally in our locker room and building the trust, respect, and some love and things like that inside our locker room. And I think going into spring football this past spring, I think probably talked about it a bunch, but just a completely different feel. And I think the ability for us to develop as football players throughout that entire spring, throughout the winter and out through the summertime, has been a greater focus for us, as opposed to just getting to know every one of our guys and who's going to be competitors and who's going to fight. We actually, to me, are a hell of a lot further along in developing our football program and our team and our guys in general.
So would you say it's the off-the-field stuff that's really come the farthest from year one to year two, because you didn't have to establish that tone? It was there kind of from the jump.
There's a lot of things that have come a long way. I think that you hope to see those things that have come a long way in your locker room with just your team and your culture and your program, understanding, knowing, being around one another, a lot of those things that are really important to us. And then I think it shows up on the football field. It's easier to show and to see the development of football players, I think, throughout the entire spring and even into some of the stuff we've been able to do here with walkthroughs and different things like that in the summer. You've seen the mature player, the ability to do what it is we're asking them to do, to understand the what's and the whys of the game of football, and then let it show up a little bit more on the football field. Those are easier things to evaluate from film in spring ball when you go live and some stuff. It's the other things that you believe have come a long way, that until you get to those adverse situations and in those tough times where camp and a season, you really hope to believe that you're a lot further.
You obviously had relationships with your staff, a lot of these guys, when you brought them in. Now, after a year of working with them, how has that development gone? And then obviously you bring Coach Stripling in and Coach Mickens in and add two guys to that staff. How has that relationship developed and getting to know those guys and how they operate better?
I think that's a big deal. Just like we talked about inside our locker room with our players, it's the same thing in our coaching staff. You go through a season that's really tough, and you find out a lot about one another. Some of the guys that have a tougher time, myself have a tougher time, just the relationships and the way you deal with people, I think we're a lot further. And I think that's what the tough times really do for you. They allow you to have to lean on one another, do some different things and go through some tough times. And that's when you learn most about each other, what you're really in it for, what's important to you. And I think that hopefully our staff has come a long way with that. The addition of Coach Mickens and Coach Strip, to me, has been nothing but great things for us. It's tough when you lose coaches, especially in 1 year. But when you have a chance to make your team better, to make your staff better, just with different guys and different fits and what they can bring to the table, and knowing what we need as a coaching staff after 1 year and knowing what we need as a football program after 1 year, I think those guys have been great additions for us.
What has it meant having two legends of the football program here in Gino, having him from the beginning, and now getting Mick? How much have you talked to those guys and kind of leaned on those guys about their time here and their experience and what this place means to them?
Well, that's what we want our players to understand, and there's no better way to show it, to hear it, to see it, to feel it, than from guys that have lived it. And we kind of have that extreme ownership as a big deal to us. We talk to our guys all the time about, you first have to earn it, then you have to represent it, then you have to own it. And no better way than to show two guys that own it, for their time here and their ability to love this place deeper than anybody would know. And I think that when you have that amongst your staff, those guys, our players, our team, our culture feels it.
Before we get into looking at camp, and how have you evolved in terms of some of maybe the off-the-field stuff in terms of scheduling and the puzzle in the AAC of bye games and home and do you take a 1 year deal? How is that? Because those are things at Ohio State you don't really have to necessarily think about as much, but here it's a little bit more of a puzzle to piece together.
It's a puzzle piece, And still, to be honest with you, right now I'm kind of staying in my lane and what's important to us, and it's development of our football program and team, and rely a lot on Mike and his staff, Bone, and what they're doing. And, they're not going to sign anything until they come and communicate and talk with us, which is where at least you've got a great relationship in the sense that from the top down that they're going to come and communicate with you. We've done a good job at giving them some parameters and the things that we'd like to see in the next 4 years. But to say I've been on the horn and spent a lot of time with trying to call around and doing some of that, no, we did our research as a staff, kind of reported it back to Mike and the people above and said, hey, these are the areas and the things we'd like to focus on. Here's some of the people we'd like to focus on. The home and homes are a big deal to me. I think that it does wonders for our football program. And I think as we continue to move on and get the culture and everything going the way we want it, I think we'll have a little bit more time and to be able to dive into doing some of those things. But when you got enough respect for the guys above that they know they got their best interest in mind and they're not just looking at a way to to pay bills and do some different things, I think that I think it's a win-win situation.
Has that philosophy changed after a year in the conference where you talked about maybe the football was a little bit better than you realized?
Yeah, in the conference in general wants everybody in our conference to play those games. They want us to schedule
UCLA on the road.
UCLA, Ohio State, Virginia Tech, these ones that we have. They want those things for our conference. They want them for notoriety. And I don't disagree with them. We just like to go with the home and homes and some things where we can get something in return. And we recruit to it too. I think it betters our program. Eventually we want to be able to measure ourselves against the best. And we have lofty goals. And we want our kids to believe and buy into the things that we're coaching and teaching and knowing that we can get there and that we can make a difference. And I mean that in college football. And in order to do that, you got to play those games.
Camp, a couple weeks out, obviously. You get through 4th of July. Your mind shifts to, the start of the season. Offensively and defensively, will things look similar to how they looked last year? Coordinators are the same. Not a huge change on either side of the ball. So will they look the same? Will they look a little different?
I think we'll definitely be a bit different. And I think that's in the evolution of what we're doing and development of who we are and what we want to be. You got an idea and you go into it and you got a plan. And I think that we do as good a job as anybody in the country of making sure we got a plan for everything we do. You go through a season and you realize that maybe we need to adjust our plan a bit, whether it's in a game, throughout a season, and then after a season. So there are some things we're going to do different. There's some looks that we'll have to be a bit different. We know defensively and offensively we need to be able to create and generate more plays, bigger plays. Not just for the fact of big plays, but the football's a game of energy and emotion, and you got to create it. And to sometimes to play a little bit more vanilla as maybe we did and maybe I'd been used to, probably isn't going to get us where we want to go. So I think we've challenged ourselves to how can we create and do some things a little bit differently, but still be unique in our own right.
Let's take a look down the position groups as we head into camp. Quarterback, the one everybody wants to talk about first and foremost. Hayden Moore is a guy you said was at the top coming out of spring football. Where is that position group at as we get ready to come into camp? And is there potential for a guy like a redshirt freshman Desmond Ritter to really push him?
There is, and I think when we get the program and the culture where we want it, the most important thing to us is that what I call healthy competition. Unit strength is a big deal to us. It's a part of our culture, and to have that what I call healthy competition amongst units is the key to everything that we do. And how do you do that? You got guys that got trust, respect, and love for one another in a room, but they want to beat each other out. And I think the development of a year of understanding those guys, especially in the quarterback room, which is the most unique room in anything, in all sports, because only one guy can play. Yeah. And that's just the way it is, and that's the guy that's going to get a lot of notoriety. And one guy's going to take more reps than others. And so to create that competition that those guys understand, believe in one another, but are going to make each other better by competing and helping one another, I think it really kind of, I'm excited to see about how the fall camp goes with that group of guys. And I mean the demeanor and everything about that group to give them all an opportunity, because don't count out Ben Bryant, who's a true freshman who came in early, who's a guy that has seen flashes throughout the spring, who's a very mature kid, and you're going to get as your works deserve. And those guys that work at it and study it, Desmond Ritter and Jake Sobko are all guys that they're going to get opportunities, and we're going to create a competition, and we're gonna have fun with it.
So open competition going into camp, or?
But I'd say that about every position. It's not just the quarterback position. The quarterback position is the most unique position. It's not Hayden's job to lose. It's not Hayden's job to win. It's the ability is to go out there and to perform and play, and ultimately the job of a quarterback is to make others around him better. It's not always about the guy that can make the best play. It's the guy that can consistently do what it is we're asking him to do. And that has something to do with guys around him believing and buying into them as a leader and as a playmaker.
You speak about positional depth. Doesn't get any better than what you've got at running back. Jared Dokes, Mike Warren, Taylor Boose looking to make a name for himself with Mike Boone gone. And then Charles McClellan and now Tavion Thomas enter the picture. That's positional depth right there.
I think talent-wise, when we just talk about development of football ability and talents, I think that there's probably no greater group that's got the depth as our running back position. Now, we've got to make sure those guys have an opportunity to help us in all different ways. And I don't just mean, well, some guy's a better receiver and some guy's a better ball carrier, someone's a better blocker. The reality is, how do they make an impact on special teams? There's only one ball. There's only so many carries that are going to be had. And our ability to use those guys and their strength and create that, what I call healthy competition amongst that unit and group, is what's got to permeate throughout the program, because there's no greater competition than that one right there. Jared Dokes obviously is a guy that we're going to rely on a lot, and I think can be a great player for us. Mike Warren's the same thing. He's not a guy that I would say after 1 year that's maybe just a natural better football player than what Mike showed us last year. And then Taylor Boose coming back from injury, and Charles McClellan, who showed up in the spring at maybe 180 pounds or 75 pounds, who's put on 20 pounds now and is legitimately a guy that can go 80 yards, is a legitimate 4-4 guy that is a difference maker for us. And then we'll see with a good young talented tailback in Tavion Thomas. So the good thing about that position is everybody will get an opportunity.
Offensive line blocking for those guys is going to be critical. You've got a guy in Garrett Campbell that's been here. I think Rick Minner was the coach when Garrett Campbell got here. He's been here a long time, and he kind of, it seems like from when I've been around, is assumed that role of kind of the leadership guy amongst that group. But you're not sure, at center there's going to be camp competition for that spot, and at tackle there's going to be some competition. Some moving parts there, but it seemed like you came out of spring pretty sure of 5 or 6 guys that you've got, and maybe a new guy that sneaks into that group.
That's the uniqueness. I think one of our number one goals coming out of spring was to find our 5 best linemen, and really we want 6 or 7 or 8, obviously, but I want to find in what combination, in what way that we can find our best 5 guys, get them in a position so they can learn to work together. We know that there's still some fluidity to that and ability to move guys around, but I don't want guys that are going to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. So we got to do our best job at finding a way to get those guys into a slot so that they can start to work together. Garrett is right now is one of our best leaders. He's a product of the culture. Here's a guy who, you're right, has been here for a really long time, and even after the ups and downs of last year, was a guy that was fighting any way possible that he could come back and do this and have another year with us. Mm-hmm. So really excited about what he brings. I think it's important for us to find where Garrett not only is best for Garrett, but where is best for us as a football program. So I think that we ended up the spring, he was playing left guard, and I think that's where he feels most comfortable. But to have him with the ability that can move to center and do some different things for us still gives us some flexibility. But that group in general has got to be the core and the crux of our football team. And I know there's still ability to move guys and shift guys in and out, but the ability for those guys to be really, really, really good together is going to be the key to what we do.
You got another senior in Kyle Trout that came from Ohio State, had 2 years of eligibility. How has he adjusted into not just being in the program, but now being a senior, being a guy that guys look up to?
I think he's taken it on. I think that's something that that he really wants, and his ability to do that and to kind of step up has shown. I think throughout that first year is a difficult year as a grad transfer, and walking in and starting for us in a lot of situations. Same thing with him, is where we're trying to find exactly what is the best spot, not just for Kyle Trout, but for us as a football program. We know he's one of our best 5 without a doubt. Is that at right tackle? Is that at right guard? And what is the abilities and what fits not just him but our program the best? To have those 2 guys like that are seniors, that are leaders, highly intelligent guys that do have the ability to move around, gives us some flexibility. But that's the challenge to us as a coach, is to not just use that as the ability to make it easier on us, but I challenge them again today to find a way to say who, what, and where do these guys best fit, and let's get them working there. Because I want them to be the best at what it is that they do at their spot.
I'm obviously not going to go through every guy, but another guy that people are interested in hearing about because of his backstory, Morgan James, hockey player, didn't have any football background. He's spent multiple years in the program now, and I thought through the spring you started to see a lot of progress with him where he was becoming a guy you could kind of count on.
He is, and I think Morgan brings something that we don't have. He has an innate little bit of a nastiness to him that is, if you ever flipped on some YouTube and Googled him, you would see that he was a hockey player and
enforcer, as they call him,
and an enforcer and a battler in a lot of ways. And and I think that it just takes time. This isn't an easy sport. This isn't an easy game. And his ability to grow in the program is what we're talking about. He's a poster child right now of what it is that we do, from our weight program to the growth of becoming a better football player. And he's one of those guys, as you walk out of the spring, you were really impressed with, and his ability to grow and to learn the game of football. He has the ability. We didn't change his God-given talents, but the ability for the coaches to get to him, to understand, to play, to be a better football player has shown. And his ability to maybe even have another year even gives him that much more of an opportunity.
Maybe some more offensive line news, but we'll get to that as we get closer to camp. We'll discuss that on BearcatJournal.com as things progress. Wide receiver, you've got a senior in Khalil Lewis that has had 3 pretty solid years in the program. Through spring, it seems the plan's to move him more outside as opposed to the slot where he was last year. And then Thomas Geddes, potentially on the other side, but got a lot of young guys coming up in that position group that are going to be looking to challenge for spots, and those 2 guys on the outside are going to be pushed.
I think this is the position that we really got to kind of grow the most. And again, similar to what we talked about with the offensive line, in some ways where we keep moving guys around. And if a guy would solidify himself, if Khalil could solidify himself as being the X and being a guy that can win the one-on-ones, and that's where we can kind of line him up and put him and allow him to really hone in on what it is that he needs to do, because we got to do that for Khalil. If he is that guy, then we got to do a really good job at giving him what he can handle and giving him an opportunity to be the best that he can be. So I think that's where we got to do a really good job of coaching to put these guys into these positions and these situations where they can play faster, they can be faster, they can be more instinctive and aggressive, as opposed to sometimes, like we keep talking about with guys, well, he's smart enough and he's good enough that he can move and play multiple positions. We got to do a better job with those guys at getting them honed in so that they can play faster and their athletic abilities show more.
Who would be going into camp, maybe 1 or 2 guys that you have your eye on to see, can this guy make a jump? Can this guy take the next step?
I still want to see Khalil make a jump. I mean, I've challenged Khalil on an everyday basis that he has goals and dreams, and we've done a lot of things even throughout this summer to just put Khalil into to be able to give him some examples of what it is that we need to do. And here's where your ability is, just your natural God-given talents. Here's where you want to be, even in another year. Here's what you need to do to get there. So I want to see the biggest jump come from maybe one of our biggest leaders, and his ability to kind of hone in and become great at what it is that he does. So I think if we can get that, if we can get Khalil on that next level, and I just mean that in a sense of not just relying on his ability, his athletic ability, but becoming a better football player, he'll be the example to that entire room. Because there's talent in the room, meaning their speed and their size, but the development of a football player, sometimes that position becomes more difficult in new systems just because of the flexibility that you have of moving guys around. So we got to do a better job as a coaching staff, myself included, and then we need somebody like Khalil to kind of step up and be that example to how it's done.
similar for Thomas? I mean, he's in year 3. He's getting long in the tooth, as they say.
And I just mean that, obviously, you asked for one, and Khalil was the one guy that I want to put some pressure on. And Khalil and I have sat down and had some of those conversations. And I wouldn't put it on him. I wouldn't talk about it, right here if I didn't feel like Khalil could handle it. Mm-hmm. And I expect him to handle it. And I expect him, when I talk like this, to be a motivation to him that's who I believe in. Not that I don't believe in Thomas, but I think that Khalil can be an example of so many others that will in turn make our program, that unit, so much better.
There's a lot of excitement at tight end, obviously, with Josh Wiley and Leonard Taylor, 2 highly rated guys coming into the program. But you've got a pretty solid group there already in Josiah DeGuara and Bruno Labelli and Wilson Huber, who I thought had a pretty solid spring coming into his redshirt freshman year. Looked like a guy, maybe as an inline guy, that could give you some quality time. But that room seems like it's really coming together.
So we talked about the running back room being the deepest room. I think that being with natural talent, maybe just looking at some of those guys, test numbers, whatever, are really one of our strongest groups. I want to keep saying the strongest group, but from top to bottom, from academics to on the field to off the field to the example to the culture that we want, the tight end group might be the strongest group we got. Now they might not be big names right now because they haven't caught a bunch of balls, but what we have at the tight end spot is a lot of balance. We've got some guys that we believe are more maybe inline type of guys. We've got some guys that are more flexed out type of guys, which gives us the ability to have flexibility, to have balance in what it is that we're doing. But none of them can't do both. So it's a really, really, really good group, strong group. I think that this might be the group that surprises all of us as much as anything. And I just mean that not always with the number of catches they have, but in their true contribution to our football program, from the offensive side of the ball to the special teams side of the ball. So there's some exciting things there. I know that some of the young guys are the guys that people hear about with Josh Wiley and Leonard, and I could probably look at you and tell you that those guys are going to have every opportunity, and we're going to play them.